At this point, the time for cars has closed. However, I do want to hear from Coy Vaughn Womack and Kim Cronin in that order. Coy Vaughn, Womack, and then Kim Cronin, and then they're closed for public.
My name is Chloe Vaughn Womack. I'm at 38620 Church Street in Umatilla. I have sat and I've listened to the board members, Ms. Masai makes a good idea. And Ms. Fisher, I'm concerned. Ms. Fisher has worked with me diligent on this, and I have worked with the superintendent. And Mr. Howard, I agree with some things that you're saying. But if we do this busing, it has to affect all of the children. What, you're saying, hazard, not hazard. I think, I wrote, is it good for our students? When we look at our students are important, and we think about it all before we think about a child. I understand budget, and I understand the Fisher said $85,000, no, it will not do it. But because there has been an error with staff, giving board members wrong information, I think we need to go back to the board, the drawing board, and that put the buses back in place until you work on your policy and procedures, and then at the beginning of January 2nd term, then if you want to make your discretion, then you do that. But right now, it's about the child. We need to do that because when kids are walking, I have walked where staff said it was not 2 miles. It was over 2 miles. The bus stop that they say they pick up, it's not there. The kids walk across to go to another bus stop. So I think you're not being fed correct information, and I think you need to work with staff, and staff need to tell you, and they need to get out and walk it and not stop doing the area miles, the GIS, the GPS. They need to walk. Those children that are on Orange Avenue, they have to get to Orange to go down Orange, to go down bypass to get to base. And I think when you look at the picture, it's over 2 miles. And I think we need to look at the broad point, and yes, we need to think about those kids. EFT students should be on special buses. They will get special funding. And also, when we think about the carryover, I'm sure we found $85,000. I'm sure we can find more. Because then when we have more, we spend. And I think when we look at it, we need to put our students first. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Kim Cronin.
I'm sorry, I filled out my card late. Kim Cronin, and I live in Howie. I've heard a lot of things that were going on here today, and I kind of wanted to make comments to some of them. I think, you're talking about trying to put this back in place as soon as possible, and Mr. Fender's correct. We lost drivers, not so many positions because we had a lot of retirees. We do have some that I think we could put right back in there. But I also think you need to think about, as Mr. Johnson referred to at the beginning of this meeting, our charter schools, our conversion charter schools, have purchased their own buses. They're transporting their own now. So, I'm not sure how many of each one. I know Groveland was talking like 200 students, so that's 200 students you're not going to be transporting because they're already doing it. I don't know how many Lake Mineola Elementary is doing. But, again, I want you to look at what you're doing. Whether I heard a suggestion about meeting with board members, but everybody needs to look at the whole picture. Let's not do something and then be backtracking again. We've got too many issues to be looking at. I'm hearing one of you say, let's do it for 6-lane highways. Not everybody's aware of all of the hazards. And I think that that's something you need to look at in a long term so that you can collect money for that stuff. And to just try and guess at what you're looking at now, I think it's going to take a little bit of time. You talked about 30 days to put a policy in effect, but I think it's going to take you 30 days or more to figure out where you can claim money from the state for hazardous walking also. And that's really all I wanted to say. I made a comment before about possibly a committee to look at these things. And I think maybe that's the way to go. If you had parents or citizens in different areas, they can that can do their own research in their area and bring it to one group so that that could be reported to you. So that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're back to the business at hand, and that's how to transport our students and care for their security. I would entertain a motion, or I'll make the motion. Is there someone on the board that wants to make a motion? Dr. Howard?
On the thread of needle, nobody's going to be happy no matter what we do. And this policy does need to be built, and this isn't a full policy. This is the entrance into the policy. I would make a motion to continue with the Brevard County bylaws and policies. We can bring those into a Lake County Schools policy, along with adding specific recommendations by the board members into our existing policies that we feel are hazardous. The first two that I would add would be 6+ lane highways and crossing 55-mile-an-hour roads that do not have proper crosswalks.
Thank you. You've heard Dr. Howard's motion. Is there a second? Second for discussion. Ms. Steiger seconds for discussion. Ms. Steiger?
Todd, how does that, I agree with what you said, but how does that take care of the immediate issue?
I think that we have another special meeting next week. I think board members need to do their homework. They need to work with staff to come up with solutions for each of their areas. I don't think anybody's going to say that you're wrong, you're just wanting to transport students and you just want to bring them back home for your district. I don't think anybody's trying to do that. We're trying to work together to find safe solutions. And I think we can do that. I think it's a progress to work through it. I believe that there are a limited number of parameters that we can give staff. We as board members say, this is over and above what the state says a hazardous walking condition. No, we're not going to get paid on it. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we believe they're hazardous. We believe that we need to make sure that we are transporting those students at our expense. Will it solve every single problem? No. Will there be some additional? Yes. But the other part to that is it allows you to continue with the NCO. It allows you to continue with the NCO to still go after those hazardous walking conditions where we can actually get reimbursement from the state. Because whatever we do here is going to affect our classrooms. And my one guiding principle on this board is education comes first. People are going to disagree. Some people are going to say busing should come first. If you were to ask me, I'm going to say every day that K-12 education is what we are supposed to be here doing. That is what I want to make sure is that we have a fantastic K-12 education program. Busing is a part of that, but when we start doing busing that is outside of the reimbursement, that is coming out of our classrooms, period. And so that becomes my concern is how much do we pull out of the classrooms? So I believe we can do both of these by supporting this, and I believe that gives board members homework to do, and we can continue to add to this next week and have a full policy built. But as it says in our, shall be entitled to free transportation provided by the district, we can, and when you add in the second paragraph that Mr. Johnson was talking about earlier, we can add in those parameters ourselves and work through them with public input and find those issues where we can solve most of the problems in policy so that staff never has to question what our intent is. And that is something that we continue to run into is, what is the intent? Let's give them our intent, give it specific parameters, and not just say, let's go back to the old way where nobody knew why we were busing.
The second part of that was, in the motion, it says motion to continue moving toward the Brevard County bylaws and policies and adding specific recommendations by this board, which in your case is a 6-lane highway at over 55 miles an hour. You don't put a time frame or how long do you want it to come back? When do we need those bylaws back? Do you want this to happen? Your two intersections, we know, I can tell you my intersection, okay? Okay, you want those to start, I need to understand this before I vote on it, Mr. Fisher.
I understand where you're coming from, and I want you to have the dialogue, so go right ahead.
We need today to give you specifics as to the intersections we want you considering hazardous, so that we're in public. That's very, and then do we say, do we supply that transportation for the first semester? And by the end of that first semester, we will have this plan in place, which will take over, and the parents will be paying us. I mean,
I think we're
that's
talking
where
about
we're at.
apples and
I know
oranges.
there's, but
Because-
it all works together.
Right.
What's the problem?
In my mind, if we write a policy that says we believe those are hazardous, those parents aren't going to be paying.
Right.
Because we are going to deem it ourselves.
That's what I
So,
did at Triangle.
so this won't ever change.
Right.
Because we're going to say, this is dangerous. We as a school board.
Until the MPO or the state or the county comes in and fixes that
Correct.
hazardous intersection.
Absolutely.
Then it no longer is, and they'll have to walk.
And I agree with that. Now, with the policy, I think we have to have a more in-depth of the Brevard County policy, because one of my recommendations was, instead of collecting for a semester, maybe collecting $90 every 9 weeks, to just make it very straightforward. They have it loaded differently. When I read through the policy, the second semester is more than the first semester. You know, from a school board standpoint, I think it would be easier to say, well, it's $90 each night. I think there's issues that we have to work through there, and we can do those today. That is a policy building over time.
What I want today is a motion and agreement on the motion. How we get to the development of it is entirely something that can evolve. But we need today a motion to accept, and you did that, Mr. Howard, you did that. You identified your hazardous areas. I can identify my hazardous areas right now, and you heard me say that earlier. State, Orange Avenue, Abrams, Highway 19, 44A, all of those areas that there are crossroads, and cars exceeding 45 miles an hour. I'm saying 45, because they're small children, even 55. And I've read all of this. You know, I brought this to your attention that I had a concern, and I appreciate each and every one of you. But we need to move forward, and we need to get this done. I'm not saying $85,000 can do it. I say that's the beginning. That is a paltry amount when you talk about the millions of dollars that we've got, but it gets started. So, Mr. Mathias, then Ms. Brandenburg, or Ms. Brandenburg, and then Mr.
This is
Mathias.
just a comment that I'm getting a little bit confused about what we're doing, to be quite honest. But it seems to me that we reacted too quickly without all the facts when we made this decision. And I remember when I was first elected, before I took office, y'all invited me to take a tour of schools. And I think that we ought to step back, get in a bus and ride around these hazardous areas throughout the county so we all understand them, because we're each speaking in a vacuum about our own specific areas. That, for me personally, I'd be more inclined to vote to reinstate, it's the easiest way to do it is to reinstate the old busing, and then let's go 2 months and let's come out with a new policy that is thought out and the parents, we've fully vetted it then. That's what I'd be more inclined to vote for.
And I would agree with you. But I also like Mr. Howard's motion, because he's making some action. Yes, Ms. Brandenburg.
We are all over the board.
No,
We are all over the board, and we're hearing different things from different board members. And I think before we can even take a vote today, we need to have the facts in front of us. I need to hear from Mr. Fender as to how many buses and how many drivers do we have that we can put back on the road, and when can we put them back on the road? What students are going to be eligible for riding these buses, and what students are not going to be eligible for riding these buses? And then also, if we're going to move forward with the Brevard policy, when could that be instated, and at what dollar amount? To try and take a vote here today on different things, I think that we need to have more information from transportation, and to, excuse me, there's no talking like that. I will not stand for it. Be quiet.
Excuse me, dialogue across the audience. If we could just stay focused, Ms. Brandenburg.
As I was saying, if we go and we just say that we're going to reinstate busing, then how many parents are going to be calling the district and say, well, this is a hazardous walking condition, my child should be eligible to walk. That's got to come from Mr. Fender and the staff as to is it or isn't it. We hear 55 miles an hour, then I hear 45 miles an hour. We can't even get it straight to be able to start to vote on something without having more information. So to make a recommendation, nobody can even agree. We all agree that the children need to be safe, that we want to make sure that they can get to school. But we cannot agree as to what that's going to be.
Okay, and I'm sorry I spoke to 45 miles an hour. That happens to be the speed limit on that street that is very hazardous. And it's the street and the intersections that I have been apprised of. Certainly, I've read the law, it does say 55. I was speaking of those streets. So, I feel like that we can make a decision. I feel like that Ms. Brandenburg has stated how she feels, and I applaud you for being candid. Board members, I'm willing to do whatever you want to do. We have got a motion on the floor. There is a second for discussion. Are there any amendments that Dr. Howard would say no?
I think this is we have to build this. It's not just about the district. It's not about the road. We have to be able to come up with the language, and that's why I tried to come up with the language to meet those specific needs on this road. I do not believe that I have the foresight to give the language for each road that we have an issue with. I believe that each board member would have a much better opportunity to do that, to actually meet with staff and say, how can I craft the language to meet this need and not cause unintended consequences. I think these are the first two we can do. We can continue to build it. We have another meeting next week. It means that we need to add some more by next week. By that time, Mr. Fender will have an idea of whether we can do these as depot stops. Because, of course, I personally do not believe we need to go back and start trying to get all of these bus routes back in, confuse parents even more, and then we do this again in 2 months. All we're going to do is create more confusion. If we can say this is where we're going, and we know that these are our non-negotiables, and these will be depot stops where these students can get on, or it will be at the closest one, then I think we can move forward, and we can add in additional as we go, come up with a comprehensive plan. Because we're not going to know every child. There's going to be a parent who's going to come up and say, you know what, you really need to work my walking position. So I don't think that I can foresee it. I don't think anybody here can foresee it. But I do believe we actually need to work with the process to build it, and we do need to find a solution today. Going backwards to me is not the answer.
Okay. And I once again really resent the fact that I hear you say going backwards. It isn't going backwards to be prudent. It isn't going backwards to be safe. And I'm not saying go backwards for a full year. I'm talking about going backwards for an interim period of time. I, 10 years ago, brought to this board the idea of kiosks and depots. I'm certainly in agreement with that, but I was told it could not be done because the language of the law says something different than what we had done in the past. I think that we need to move. I want to see this forward, but certainly I will not sit still for a second that we're going to do what we always did. If we had done what we always did, we wouldn't be here today. All those in favor of Mr. Howard's motion, is there any further discussion on Dr. Howard's motion? Dr. Howard, would you like to say it again?
Probably should have written it down.
I did. And I wrote it down also, but it's up to him to say it.
This is a motion to Brevard County bylaws and adding specific recommendations for Lake County schools, as well as adding recommendations for our own hazardous walking conditions as Lake County schools will define them. Mine would be including 6-lane highways and any student needing to cross a road at 55 miles an hour or greater without proper sidewalks. Or excuse me, without proper crosswalks. I'm sorry.
Is there a time frame, and are you going to speak to your depots?
I believe that
It's not in your motion.
there's
As you
no
just
time
stated.
frame.
You know, put depots in.
No.
All those in favor, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried 3-2. And that was Mr. Mathias and myself voting against the motion. Is there further discussion for today? If there's not,
But is that the only, that's all we're going to decide today?
that's the
Do we
only
not-
thing that was on the agenda.
But we can't discuss, did we cover in that whole motion? I thought we were talking about the development policy, right? Just so I'm clear, because I held back because we're not going to discuss what we're going to do about, no, not for we're going about our hazards today.
Your Pine Ridge would be included in this.
Mr. Mathias, can I speak
I'm
here?
sorry.
That's okay. Did what we just voted on, did it cover that we're not going to take care of the issues that we have today?
It took care of the issues. It is up to how fast Mr. Fender can get some of these in. We cannot tell him he's going to start busting tomorrow because we know it's not possible.
But I don't disagree with that, Todd.
And that's what I'm saying. From a policy standpoint, Pine Ridge and all the schools in the South Lake are taken care of. I can't answer for Ms. Fisher, I can't answer for Ms. Simon, and I can't answer for Roseanne. Beyond that, now we have to have further discussions to add those in. But we have taken the first step to define what we believe are hazardous.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Johnson.
Yes, under our current policy, what you can do is to grant special authorization in the specific circumstances. So you have that ability under your policy today that if you come back on Monday and decide on what the criteria are that you're going to utilize based upon whatever Mr. Fender tells you, then you can vote under this particular policy to grant special authorization to all those people in those circumstances to allow use of the bus without charge.
So then the superintendent can direct Mr. Fender to have hours for Monday?
I don't think there's a list because you haven't approved the list other than, well, you haven't approved any list. Dr. Howard indicated the two circumstances he was looking for. I'm assuming that the superintendent is going to have to get the information from the rest of you, either at a meeting or before that, to come up with a list for the other.
At a meeting, I'm not doing it before, and I'm not doing it by phone. Ms. Cole?
I think at this point, because we've heard the motion, the recommendation that you're making, if you would give staff time to work with this particular motion, if they need to get with each one of you to identify those areas of concern, then I think staff can work it out, and on Monday, we could have something to bring back to the board.
My concern is you had individuals in front of you who stated they want to be able to trust us, they want to be able to for us to earn that trust back. I would really like to see it discussed publicly in a meeting. I think that you can draw up, just as Dr. Howard and I have addressed, areas in your community and be prepared to bring them to the board's attention on Monday. But, if you want to speak to the administration, administration. You have every right to speak to the administration any day of the week.
Mrs. Fisher,
Yes.
it would be helpful to expedite matters if the board members with or without staff would be able to verbalize the conditions that they're looking at. That way we could potentially put it immediately in the policy Monday night and have it come back again in another week.
Okay. Okay, further discussion? Board members, I thank you very much. I thank those who stayed with us during the entire meeting. This is Government in the Sunshine. All those, please understand this meeting is adjourned.